Do we think we're ready to get started?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Well, I'll kick it off. Do we want to start the recording?
I believe, Matt, are we recording and broadcasting? He said he didn't have a microphone, so I'm waiting to see in the chat.
Yeah. And then are we recording through Zoom?
I will start it right now. We're now recording.
All right, good. All right, I'd like to call the Regional Planning Governing Board Legislative Subcommittee to order. We're conducting this meeting online via Zoom. And we have, our committee was appointed at our last Regional Planning Governing Board meeting. It consists of the chair, vice chair, and former chair of the Regional Planning Governing Board. And with that, Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, I will. Donald Abbott.
Here.
Naomi Dewar.
Here.
And Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
All right. All right. Well, looks like we have a full quorum. Appreciate everybody being here. Our next item for action is election of officers, and we'll elect a chair and a vice chair. I'll just say I would be interested in continuing, since I'm chair of the board, to be chair of our legislative committee, similar to we do it at some other boards we're on, but that's not a given. So I'm looking to our members to get their thoughts.
I would nominate you to be chair and Donald to be vice chair.
Okay. Don, how do you feel about that?
I'll take it. Or if you want to, Hartung is your vice chair.
Oh, no. Your goal.
I'll take it.
I got plenty to do.
Okay, so I have a motion for Mr. Hartung on election of chair and vice chair. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, for Mr. Abbott. So a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a unanimous consent on that one. We're moving over to item 3, approval of the agenda. And I'm looking for a motion. I'll ask first, Dr. Smith, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right, then could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Abbott, second, Mr. Hartung. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have unanimous approval of that item. And now we'll open ourselves up for item 4, public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess at this time I would ask if either of the two attendees in the webinar would like to speak for public comment. If you could please indicate through the chat function that you'd like to be brought in. We'll just give them a sec to negotiate that.
Or they could raise their hand. I don't see anyone raising their hand either. So.
Yep, I don't see anything there. So I think maybe they're just watching.
Okay.
There will be another opportunity for public comment as well. So in the meantime, if you want to say something, please chime in.
Okay. All right, we're going to close general public comment and go on to our business of the day, item 5A. And item 5A, we're looking at possible adoption of the advance schedule for the Regional Planning Governing Board Legislative Committee to set up a series of meeting dates. And we've been provided in our backup a list of those dates, and I'll hand it off to Dr. Smith. And I'm also, since it is for possible action, I'm going to call for public comment too, if there is any. But why don't you tell us about it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so item 5A is a possible adoption of the advanced schedule of the Rpgb Legislative Subcommittee for meeting dates for the calendar year of 2021. We have Regional Planner Chris Tolley to take us through a very short presentation to outline that advanced schedule we've put together.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you can see the slideshow.
Yes.
Looks good.
Cool. All right, good afternoon again, Rpgb Legislative Subcommittee members, Chris Tolley, Team RPA. This item seeks the Legislative Subcommittee's decision on the advanced schedule for the legislative session. First, the 81st session of the Nevada Legislature begins on February 1st of this year. The proposed Legislative Subcommittee schedule includes regular meetings scheduled for the first Thursday of each month during the session, and the reserve meetings scheduled for the remaining Thursdays during the session. And finally, the RPGB legislative subcommittees have historically met at 10 a.m. on Thursdays during each session. So with that, the proposed motion is on the screen and on page 1 of the meeting packet. This does conclude my presentation. However, we are available for any questions.
Okay. So if we stop screen sharing for a minute, let me ask the committee. It sounded like they had a traditional meeting time of 10 a.m. I had previously checked my calendar for all of these days. Unbelievably, they all worked out. And the day that we have regional planning, I thought I have like 3 publicly noticed meetings that day, but the 10 a.m. time was clear. And maybe this is just for discussion, maybe in the interest of having some continuity and not having times move around. What would the committee think about those dates that have been proposed and the time of 10 a.m.?
I'm good with 10 a.m. on those dates.
Well, a cursory view of my calendar shows that I'm available also, but you know, things change sometimes. So
They do.
yeah, and we all know that. I mean, you know, things get thrown into the mix. So as of right now, you know, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, if that looks good, I'd entertain a motion to adopt Thursdays going forward to reserve the time at 10 a.m. to plan to hold a meeting on the first Thursday of each month, but to reserve the other days for possible meetings as needed.
So moved.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, Mr. Hartung, second, Mr. Abbott. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Smith. You did magic on that one because usually that's a tough one.
Well, we have to thank Mr. Tolley on that one. He's the one that put those dates together. So good job, Chris.
Okay, good job. Thank you.
Will you guys send out a calendar invite for us, or?
That's what I was
Yes,
hoping to.
absolutely. I was going to ask that.
Okay.
We'll be happy to send for all the dates. Probably just the main dates, though. Do you also want the reserve dates for a calendar invite?
I would, just to have
Okay.
them and, you know,
Then I'll do 2 separate, a calendar for the main one and then the reserve calendar event.
I think that would be great.
Cool. You got it.
Okay. All right,
Thank
item
you.
5B. We're looking at discussion, possible direction to staff on obtaining a lobbyist for the 2021 legislative session. Back to you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No presentation for this item today. Just kind of wanted to put it out there on the table and understand the will of the subcommittee in terms of hiring a lobbyist. Some background about the agency. Since I've worked in the agency since about 2011, in the early years, we had an on-staff employee that would track bills. It was a government affairs person, Patty Rogers. She did that for several years. When she left the agency, we started hiring a lobbyist firm, Ferrado and Carano and Ferrado. I can't remember the name of the word.
Crowley. Sorry.
Crowley and Ferrado. Thank you very much. Yeah. So we had that relationship for the I believe the 2019 and possibly the 2017 legislative sessions. They gave us a darn good rate of, I believe it was about $500 a month. And so, you know, most of our lobbyist activity is defensive. If there's something, you know, coming up that we need to address. In 2 instances, myself, Kim Robinson, the previous director, and Lauren Knox, a previous senior planner, we also registered as lobbyists. And so we could take on that role and speak to folks down there too as needed. And in this go around, our legal counsel, Jessica Prunty, has offered to act as our sort of bill tracker person that would keep her eyes peeled on what's going on. So we have some options. We don't necessarily have to get a lobbyist, but we do have $6,000 budgeted for lobbyist services.
All right, let's open it up for discussion. What do my colleagues feel? Mr. Martin?
Thank you. So, Mr. Smith, is Mr. Crowley and his partner, Ms. Ferrado, are they available and are they willing to do the job? They've always been great. They're very low key. They've done a good job for us in the past.
With Kim Robinson leaving the agency, they decided at that time to terminate the relationship, and that I think maybe I didn't reach out to see if if they wanted to re-up. We did contact 3 or 4 other lobbyists, and I think Chris Tolley has some of the information about that. So we've been talking with other folks, but our understanding was that they were done and moving on. I think maybe it was.
Then that's okay. Who's on the list, Mr. Tolley? Who all do we have?
The people that we've reached out to or we've contacted would be Tom Clark, and then we contacted J.K. Bells, and then also I'm going to get it wrong, but Kyle Davis, and I've forgotten the name of their company, but those are the 3 that we've had the most conversation with. We've received a proposal of sorts from 2 of them, and then J.K. Bells is just an ongoing conversation. So that's where we're at with the 3 that we've reached out to. I believe I contacted 2 others and didn't receive a reply.
So let me ask our legal counsel, with a contract of this size, what's our requirement for bidding or putting it out to the public, or how does it work?
You don't have any of those requirements imposed upon you for a contract like this.
So we could just reach out to whomever and select someone?
Absolutely. If you feel like you need to retain a third-party lobbyist, you are absolutely entitled to do that.
Okay. Well, that actually brings up the next question I was going to ask is, what is the demand for the lobby work, and what scanning ahead, what do we feel in terms of, as you put it, Dr. Smith, being in a defensive posture? Because we don't have any bills that we're advocating for at this time.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, I think that the primary function initially would be to just do the bill tracking and to identify any bills that are going to interact with our sphere, in terms of what we're trying to do. And I think, the potential, it escalates from there. And hopefully, it won't. But in 2019, I believe we had maybe 1 meeting of this subcommittee, and there was very little activity. And so, it didn't require a lot of attention. But in past sessions, there has been, active legislation we know that's targeted towards our agency. And so, as far as I know right now, I don't have any information to indicate that we'll be facing that this session.
Yes, Jessica.
I did a survey last week, I believe, of BDRs that are out there, and there's nothing right now that touches NRS 278 whatsoever. And so I don't know what could be on the horizon. No one knows. And I don't know what we are anticipating for the session. I think probably looking at maybe dealing with revenue shortfalls and the ongoing pandemic. I spoke with Director Smith earlier today, and I am more than happy, given that everything's pretty low key right now with the agency, to take on the additional work of surveying the BDRs and the bills that come out every week, and doing and signing up for the individual bill tracking. And I would do that under our regular compensation arrangement, flat fee arrangement that Norm and I have had for years. So it would be no additional cost to the agency except for the expense for the bill tracking, if any. And I'm more than happy to do that for you if that's what you choose to do. The one downside to that is if for some reason there was something presented that put the agency in a defensive posture and you felt the need to have a professional lobbyist, you might come up short because you wouldn't have anyone on retainer at that time. But this subcommittee or Dr. Smith, if he chose to register as a lobbyist, might be able to field those types of instances if you feel that there might be some of those types of imminent threats that might be presented this session.
What about you, Mr. Abbott? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. What are the proposals? What are the amounts for the 2 that submitted?
Chris, do you have? I think one was for the one from Kyle Davis and team was for $12,000. You have those numbers?
Davis, I remember it being horn honking. I remember it being 6, but I could pull it up really quick, and I believe the one for Tom Clark was in the neighborhood of 12. So, and those would be, I believe, just for the session itself, and not a proposal for the entire year.
And we have $6,000 budgeted. Correct.
Correct. Yes, we do. And the cost in the past years For registering as a lobbyist, when I've done that, it's been $300. Even though we're a nonprofit government agency, still that cost is there. I believe the bill draft, we were discussing that before the call, and it's around $600 for unlimited bill tracking. But there may be an option for government entities to get that for free. So we're researching that. So those costs.
$600 for the session.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Abbott?
Oh, I guess I'm just trying to figure out if we even have enough money to go anywhere else. Or
I'm thinking, thinking basically the same thing. So what about you, Mr. Hartung? What's your inclination?
No, my inclination, close your ears, Miss Prunty. She's very competent. I have all the faith in the world in Jessica and Mr. Azevedo in terms of, assisting us. And if we're forced to hire a lobbyist, let's figure out, sadly, we don't have anything that we can sink our teeth into. So we don't know. My inclination is, and please don't take this the wrong way, it's not spoken in the pejorative. We're a pretty benign agency. And some of the stuff in the past is just, it's been more saber rattling than anything. And so I don't see us as needing to spend a great deal of money. We are, our budget is tight. We're not a big flush agency. So I'm inclined to just stay the course with Ms. Prunty, and let's if we do have to knuckle down and hire a lobbyist, then we can certainly figure it out. Of the three, I know Mr. Clark, he's very competent. Kyle Davis, most of you know Kyle. That's Amber Joyner's husband. Very, very savvy, very competent fellow. I don't know the third. That's not speaking to their competency at all. I just don't know who they are.
Yeah.
But my recommendation would be that we stay the course and allow Ms. Prunty to track things for us. And if we need to mobilize at some point, then we'll deal with that bridge when we cross it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I'll weigh in. I really appreciate thoughts of my colleagues. I tend to be exactly where you are. And I also feel that if something does come up, that we have almost all of us on the phone capable of participating. And, if there was a bill come up, it would probably be a last minute thing. I think we would be going down. Dr. Smith, Jessica, Prunty, any of our board members, we could make a plan and do that. That's what I would think. Who better to hear from? Yeah.
Have we ever gone the offense? Is there anything that we want changed or like a wish list? I don't know.
Fantastic question. Not in the history that I've been involved with the agency. We've never gone on the offense. We have identified that there are maybe small things in the statutes that could use a cleanup one day. I think we're wary to do that right now. And really our goal is to see, we've done some paradigm shifting things with the new plan. And I think we want to see how that plays out before we go and try to, open up the statute. When you open things up, you might not get what you want, So We're able to work through any of those little inconsistencies right now pretty easily. And I think it doesn't seem to warrant offensive strategy right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'd like to do is, Mr. Hartung, and then if the group's willing, I'd like to see if either of the folks that are in the waiting room would like to speak to this in public comment and maybe give us some input and thoughts from their perspective.
Yeah, Madam Chair. In fact, Tom Clark had his hand up to speak, so I wanted to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you want to speak, Mr. Hartung?
I do. So it's my understanding that this session may be different than any other. We may not be able to directly lobby and go down to Carson City. So there may not be many opportunities to lobby, quote unquote, as we historically have known how the process works. Now, we may not even be able to sit through hearings. They may all be virtual. And so, again, at this time, I'm happy to hear from Mr. Clark, and I'm happy to hear from Mr. Davis or whomever else is ready to speak to us. I'd love to hear from their perspective or hear their perspective. But this may be just like last year. This may be a session that could be very different than in past years. So thank you for allowing me to voice that.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. And actually, that would argue for us retaining the authority because we can more easily participate. We don't have to be down there catching people. They have to be a little bit more careful about scheduling meetings with agendas so that people can participate by Zoom or whatever remotely. So anyway, well, with that, let's ask for any public comment.
Okay, great. I think I'll bring Mr. Clark into the meeting, and he can choose to speak to us.
Welcome, Mr. Clark. You can unmute yourself and show us yourself if you can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can.
Good. Hi. Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. I appreciate that, and I respect the input that you've already had. This is going to be what I'm calling the unprecedented legislative session. We typically walk into each legislative session saying it's going to be interesting. Well, it's more than interesting, not just from a pandemic perspective, but because of the major policy issues and budget issues that this Gang of 63 is going to have to address in the coming 4.5, 5 months. Layer on top of that you probably will have redistricting, which we understand is going to be a special session topic, not a regular session topic. And to Ms. Prunty's point, I too have gone through the bill draft request list. There isn't anything specifically now that addresses the certain chapters of NRS that address your issues, but that's not to say that it couldn't come up at some time. As far as the process of the session, what we know right now is that at least for the first 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be an all virtual session, much like our 2 special sessions were throughout the summer. However, there is a very there's a lot of interest in making sure that the public has a way to participate in the process, and us lobbyists will basically ride the coattails of the public and be able to get in and do the work that we do. That said, the proposal that I had originally put forward, I put forward without recognizing or not knowing what your budget was, and so I would be willing to cut that in half to meet the budget that you've got. That way, basically what it does is it allows our team to monitor and track all of the things that are not just contingent on your particular NRS, but what other local governments are doing throughout the state that could affect the operations of the TRPs. So, and if necessary, go to the table and testify in a quick manner, an educated manner to be able to make sure that your interests are actually heard and understood, and that just keep you at the table when you need to be at the table. And I also agree that the participation could come a lot from the members of this legislative committee as far as
Mr. Clark, if you can hear us, I think you've frozen on us.
we would be the general counsel to help you through that. So it would be
Can you go over that last 1 minute? You froze on us, so we didn't hear your last thoughts.
I believe I was talking about the potential for having a registered lobbyist that becomes the resource for the legislators and others. So if they're thinking of an issue that could affect you, they know who to reach out to, and we can bring that to you. They come to us and say, hey, Tom, we've got this issue. We see you're registered. Can you guys provide some input? And it may be that simple. It may be more complicated. Even though the bill draft request list has been populated so far, we still have probably another 40 to 50 bills coming from committee chairs. And then we also have the leadership legislation and bills coming down the road as well. So while the BDR list is a really good guide for now, there could be something that could pop up, and your lobbyist would be, the one that would let you know that it's there and also participate on your behalf in a quick, efficient manner during the time period of the legislative session.
Well, let me first say that I just really appreciate you showing up here today. Just the very fact that, we reached out and you took the time to come and visit with us and give us your insight, I think speaks volumes. And I really appreciate it. And I'll just tell you that, if there was a competition, it's kind of put you over the giving you a little step up in potentially being hired by us, because you're here having this conversation with us, which is really helpful. I will tell you, I guess what I'm thinking is that even at 6,000, I think it's a little steep for what we think we're facing. So we're not a city of Sparks, we're not a Washoe County, we're not a Reno level people that are having to watch out for many different kinds of bills. We're only watching out for one kind of bill. We've had this extremely generous offer from Ms. Prunty to wrap this sort of tracking service into her current contract without having to increase her price, which is pretty darn amazing. So I'm so grateful that you're willing to do that. I guess my thought right now is, and I know that as the session goes on, things heat up and we may lose an opportunity, let's say, to retain you mid-session if something came up. That's one idea. A different idea is to wait for at least 1 month and revisit this issue generally so that most of the bills will have come in. It may be that the bills that we are most concerned about are those leadership bills versus some other bills. So that kind of mitigates against that, but we could wait to see what the, what's on the table, so to speak, until we make a final decision about how we're going to go. But I'm kind of leaning towards the option I just laid out, which is that, if we got in that situation, even if we had to pay a little bit more per month than what you've outlined, which I think is about $500 a month, even if we had to pay $700 a month for 2 months because a bill came up at the last minute, that might be something that you might be interested in and willing to do. So it's just a thought. And I'd like to hear from my colleagues what you're both thinking. Mr. Abbott?
I'm still muted. No, I definitely like the idea, I think, with Jessica, and it doesn't sound like we have a lot to go on, but I would like to hear from Tom if you would be willing, if we were to have something come up, are you willing to be our go-to lobbyist for, something pops up, we call you, or are you interested or not?
Thank you, Madam Chair, to you and through you, Mr. Abbott. I will tell you that I got your back. I mean, you guys you're our elected officials, you're friends of mine, and we will be as flexible as you would like. The big interest for me is that the TRPA deals with issues that are near and dear to my heart here in local government. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on these issues regardless.
Okay.
And if something comes up, I will definitely let you know. Okay. And if it is a big issue, then we can revisit the contract issue. But for the most part, I'll be looking out for you and letting you know if something does come up or if something is getting strange, and you guys can revisit as a legislative committee. I've got your calendar now. I know when you'll be meeting, and I want to tell you too. At any time, if you have a question or concern, you just want to know what the feel of what's happening in the building, outside of the building, around the legislative process. We are ready, willing to be able to provide you with that counsel.
Well, first of all, I have to just say that's incredibly generous, just like Ms. Prunty offering her services. Both of you are amazing. I'm preparing to put you on speed dial, and I want to make sure you have my phone number and my colleagues' phone numbers. I think that's very generous, very fair. I already feel like we're building a relationship in this context. I've known you for many years, Tom, obviously, but not in this context of regional planning. And so again, the fact you've shown up, you have a long history with the legislature, and you're willing to do this, I think speaks volumes. So, Mr. Hartung, thoughts?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts, and I too have been friends with Mr. Clark for quite a number of years. I always admire his candor, and I like that. I'm perhaps of a little different mindset. If he is willing to reduce his fees down to a level that we have budgeted, we were ready to do that anyways. This is part of an ongoing relationship where he can work with Miss Prunty, and maybe we can just come up with some kind of a figure that works for all of us, where there isn't an expectation, and it's this ongoing relationship again from year to year to year. That's worth a lot to us.
Yeah.
And so I'm again, we budgeted a certain amount of money, and just to say, well, let's not spend that money at all because maybe we have a better deal. But for the sake of that ongoing relationship, I'm willing to at least have that discussion because it's important. This year could be. I mean, this could be just calm waters as far as the planning agency is concerned, and it might be that can of peanuts where there's spring snakes hiding inside of it. You just don't know, and that's not a pejorative comment about the legislature. It's just sometimes you just don't know what's going to sneak out of the bushes on you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Mr. Abbott, if you have some other thoughts. I want to react to Mr. Hartung's thought, but go ahead. Okay. What I'm thinking right now, this is sort of our organizational meeting. My suggestion would be that we come back at what I think we're meeting in about 2 weeks with our first meeting. And by then, most of the bills will be in. They will be in. I think they have to be in by, the next batch have to be in, I think, within the next few weeks. And then maybe you could meet Dr. Smith with Tom Clark and kind of just sort of talk it through and see with Jessica how that might work, what that might look like, and bring us back a proposal for our consideration at our next meeting, including a price as well. I don't want to count on one person and sort of take advantage of them. I'll use those terms, not that we would, and then pay another person and then they're doing duplicate work and, all of that. I would rather have it kind of figured out who's doing what and who we're paying what. So that's where I'm thinking right now, that we could make that decision in a couple weeks. And I think that would be, I think you have us down for February 3rd?
February 4th at 10 a.m.
Right?
The 4th, yes.
How do people feel about that approach?
That works for me.
And that,
where we're at.
That works for me also, but I guess what I would just remind us of, and look, and I've dealt with lobbyists for a long time, both locally and in DC, and that ongoing relationship over time is, that's the one that that I'm looking to build, and yeah. It's you budget a little bit each year, and again, I know we're not a big agency, we're not extremely flush, but those ongoing working relationships, man, they are important. That's
well, I 100% agree, and we've built that with Tumwa, we've built it with Western Regional Water Commission, we built it with even the Ferretto group, prior to. I'm all for that, and that might even be extra incentive for Mr. Clark, knowing that that's kind of our intent and kind of how we're focused and thinking. And, to kind of really scope out what services, what the relationship would be, how it'd work with Ms. Prunty, so on. So I like where we're going. So what do you think, Dr. Smith?
I think it sounds very reasonable, and we can accomplish it well in advance of the next meeting and bring back a proposal to be decided upon.
Okay. So Ms. Prunty, do we need a motion to this effect, or is that enough like direction to staff?
I don't think you need a formal motion at this time, Madam Chair. I think that's enough direction, and it sounds like Dr. Smith, Mr. Clark, and myself will arrange another meeting and kind of talk about things to see where we can streamline Mr. Clark's role, and I can carry some of the water. I am not a lobbyist by any means, nor am I ever. I'm just happy to help what I can to help with your guys' budget criteria. So
I like the plan personally because you're our ongoing person. You've been with us a long time. We've renewed this relationship, eyes and ears with Mr. Clark. Hearts and minds too. I think there's a good thing that's evolving here personally.
I agree. So we will we'll have a meeting and we'll report back and come back with something I think that the subcommittee will find workable.
Well, who knew that if you showed up at a meeting, Mr. Clark? I knew, but you probably did too. Like, I always say showing up is half the battle, right? So
that's 90% of what lobbyists do. We just make sure we're there. And sometimes you poke your head in just to let people know you're there. But you can't learn, you can't understand what's happening unless you're present.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, with that direction, we'll close out this item 5B. Thank you, board. That was great. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Good.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item 5C, which is any proposed legislation or legislative items that we see coming. Item 5C. Thoughts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Director Smith for the record again. We really put this item on there just because we anticipate that this will be an item we'll need to have on the agenda regularly as items come up. Our cursory, as we've already discussed, our cursory look at the list has not identified anything at this time that we need to be concerned about. I believe there's one Senate committee about infrastructure that we may want to keep our eyes on, because obviously we're involved in that scene. But it's really just kind of a placeholder for today. But if there's any, I think maybe what would be interesting would be to hear back from you all. What would be the best format to receive this kind of information? And do you have any thoughts on how you want to be kept apprised of what we're tracking?
Okay. I'm going to again go to my colleagues. I like to do that. So any input for Dr. Smith?
Just here, I guess, and there's some priority in an email, but I don't want to go over every bill if we don't have to, but yeah, here's fine.
Okay. Mr. Hartung?
Well, it's not my job to drive the train, the whistle I can't blow. But that said, Ms. Prunty, do you keep this like in an Excel sheet of things that are potential and that could morph? Is that what you do?
That's going to be my plan, Mr. Hartung, is to give probably a weekly update, at least to Dr. Smith. I'm not sure if the committee also wants that, and probably in an Excel format. I haven't quite thought that all the way through yet, but
yeah, and that's historically how we've done it in other committees. TUMWA, Western Regional Water, and et cetera. That's how it's presented to us in an Excel format, and they're typically ranked in terms of how much they'll affect the organization versus maybe not much, but still in the general realm of what the organization does. Am I making sense to you?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And in fact, my recollection is that was a similar format that we would see from Crowley and Ferrado in the past years. And so I was going to follow a similar format.
Yep. That's my recommendation. But again, it's not my job to drive the train. The whistle I can't blow. I'm not allowed to say how far the train's allowed to go. So you guys make that decision, and I'm happy to. That's an easy format for me. Just send it out to us, and then if we have concerns or questions, then we can certainly have Dr. Smith agendize that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Loving all the song references and the poems. Thank you, Dr. Hartung. Mr. Hartung. I would like to get it when you produce it weekly. It'll probably only take a few minutes to review, and I'll just have it in my inbox. And if it'll just be a good little reference tool for me. So I think that's how I would like it. I like the Excel format as well. So, or table. A chart of some kind. Doesn't have to be in Excel because that has more challenging data entry, but you can sort. So you'll decide how you like it and send it over to us. The only thing I request is one of the challenges I've had on some of the other committees is they put it in such incredibly small font. I would just appreciate it if you could see if you could make it into a bigger font. That would be very welcome, you know. So.
Absolutely. Myself as well.
Okay. we're the glasses girls. Okay. All right. Well, that's good for me. Anyone else? Last comments on this topic? And, you know, Mr. Clark may have some input on that too. He may have some thoughts, you know, for what he does for other clients. So, okay, I'm going to close out this item 5C. We've taken no action. So I'm looking for any reports, 6A from the members and directors. I have none. Let me ask Dr.
I really
Smith.
have none, just that, you know, as we've established, our next meeting will be on February 4th at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Okay.
on Zoom.
Good. Legal counsel, anything for us? No? Okay, we'll close out those items. Any future agenda items? I think we know what our work is, so we're good. Any final public comment? Mr. Clark or anyone else in the waiting room? I don't know if we have anyone.
We have no others in the waiting room, but Mr. Clark, if you had other comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not. I think that you guys are on the right path, and I like big fonts too.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, well, we'll close public comment, written correspondence. I haven't
We
heard
have
of any.
none. No.
We'll pass on number 9. And then we're right up to adjournment. Very effective. May I hear a motion to that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye. We
Aye.
are adjourned.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
for joining
everybody. Kirk out.
Thank you so much.
us. Thank you.